We're going to take the North and never give it back.
So that's a good pick. You get the corner. I got to go bold, right? I got to go bold for this.
Yeah, she's got some nice long
Welcome back to the Unbearable Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Brad Barron. Make sure to like and subscribe out there on YouTube. And always rate the show 5 stars everywhere that you get your podcast. What's going on? Happy 4th of July, everybody. And today, we start our camp countdown where we start and break down every player on the Chicago Bears. We're starting out with just the tight ends and fullbacks, just to kind of start off a little bit small, but still, lots of changes have happened at the tight end position, and we're going to break it down. Who have we lost? What has been going on? And who have we acquired in the 2024 season? And then break down as many players as we need to. Then talk a little overs and unders on some stats for the position group. And then last but not least, the most important, did we get better at the position group, and what exactly would be better, or what exactly would be worse with this position group? So let's get started. And also, new camera, just got it set up. So I'm hoping to get live sometime soon out there on YouTube so we can get back out there. My camera wasn't working. I was plagued with bad camera syndrome out on YouTube. That's why we haven't had any live shows as of recent. So hopefully we can get this show back live. So make sure to subscribe and also hit the bell, because like I've always said, I don't know when I'll be live, but I'm hoping that we'll be live frequent now that it's seemingly like I got my camera situation all figured out. But let's get into the departures. So who did we lose last year coming into this year? And when I was looking at this, the only person that really we lost was Robert Tonyan, where, okay, Robert Tonyan, I like the acquisition of Robert Tonyan, but to me, this isn't a huge loss. So I'm more than fine with that, Robert Tonyan being the person that we end up losing. But if we look at what we had at tight end last season, kind of reminded me of a couple different pieces. We had Robert Tonyan, but then we also had Stephen Carlson, and then I forgot how many backup fullbacks we had. We had the one out of we had Jake Tonjes, if y'all remember him, and Burns. We had a couple backup fullbacks to Kari Blasingame. But besides that, this has really been the exact same scenario that we had last season or during the season. And if we look at the roster now, we really just swapped out Robert Tonyan with Gerald Everett. And then you look at the other tight ends too. Now, this isn't necessarily a fullback. I just threw them under fullback because it was easier for me with the graphics. But you can most likely expect them to play tight end. Tommy Sweeney and also Brendan Bates. So two bottom of the roster types of people. But really the overall depth chart that we have, Cole Kmet starting, Gerald Everett is the backup. So they should both be out there fairly frequently in this system. Then Mercedes Lewis was brought back, and Stephen Carlson still as that 4th tight end in the season, with Kari Blasingame being the fullback. And we'll also definitely talk about this fullback position because when we break down Kari Blasingame, because of the nature of the position, and is this something that we really are going to see with Shane Waldron's offense? But let's flip into our player breakdown, shall we? So the first player that we got to break down is the man, Cole Kmet. We got to talk about him. And Cole Kmet, tight end out of Notre Dame, entering his 5th season, which is crazy to say. Right now he's 25, will eventually turn 26 during the season, but still a very young player, and recently coming off of that 4-year, $50 million contract that he just signed. And you look at his grades, the 11th highest graded tight end according to PFF, but had the 7th highest receiving grade as well according to PFF. Now, he has also not missed a game, so he's been the whole poster boy of just being a reliable tight end that's out there. And truly, he is an inline tight end. Over 510 snaps inline compared to around 270 in the slot. So truly, an inline tight end that the Bears last season goes with his career high 73 receptions for 719 receiving yards, 6 touchdowns, and 90 targets. Current cap hit of $11.6 million this year. Now, Cole Kmet. I was looking back at what we talked about last season with Cole Kmet and the tight end position. And for our over-unders, I was kind of like, okay, I think he's going to probably do a little under with some of these because of DJ Moore. But ultimately, Cole Kmet really blew things out of the water. And I don't think he gets enough credit for how good he has become and just how he has steadily increased every single season. He's just looked better and better and better. He's always been a solid blocker at tight end, and he is one of these true inline tight ends. You don't see as many of these true top 10 tight ends that are just truly inline players like a Cole Kmet. A lot of them play heavily in the slot. Cole is an inline guy, and for those that don't know, inline means right next to the offensive tackles. So then when they're out in the slot, they line up more as a wide receiver. They don't have offensive linemen around them. And Cole Kmet steadily has been getting better. So my question for you, everyone that's watching out there on YouTube, will he take the next step next season? Will Cole do that? For me, I'm curious how much farther he can go up. I think he can become more reliable. I think he does have room to keep on progressing. I think he has room to keep being that reliable piece. Do I ever think he's going to be a top tight end in the league? Maybe not. But do I think that he can be one of these top players, like a tier down from like a Mark Andrews, and be this truly reliable player that's maybe in the tight end number 5 discussion? It's a very intriguing piece because we knew coming out of Notre Dame, he was really more of an athletic specimen. He had solid production, but it was really more so this guy projects to be a very good and solid tight end, which he has been. And truthfully, I've been absolutely blown away with his progression, and I really do hope he can take that next step. And I think ultimately, I think he does. I don't think maybe the stats don't necessarily, they might not show it, but I think as a player, as a leader, I think he continues to take those steps and continues to just look like a better and better tight end. But let's talk about the backup tight end. Now, is this truly a backup tight end? Because I remember PFF, they had him ranked as a top 20 tight end. His PFF grade was actually the 26th, but still, they're like, listen, this guy is a phenomenal tight end, and that's Gerald Everett, going into his 8th season out of South Alabama, 6'3", 245. So more of a shorter tight end, even though he is 6'3". Cole Kmet is 6'6", so he's an absolute unit of a player. But Gerald Everett, he's 30 years old and signed, and actually I need to update his contract details. He signed a 2-year, I believe, deal with the Chicago Bears, and his cap hit is only $5.46 million this season. So a fairly low number for a player that is a very good tight end. And last season, 3.8% drop rate, and this guy is just a tackle breaker too. He gives you a different dynamic than, say, a Cole Kmet, where Cole Kmet more in line. Gerald Everett did play a little bit more in line than he did in the slot, but he was always kind of a 50-50 receiver in the slot and in line for the Chargers. Now comes on over, not a great blocker, 51.3 run block grade. He's never been known as a run blocker, more of a receiving threat that you can get in short receptions. You just dump it to him short, he'll break some tackles and make some big plays. Cole Kmet can still break tackles, but Gerald Everett is, to me, a little bit shiftier than Cole Kmet. Cole Kmet is the good old bruiser that, hey, I'm just going to lower my shoulders, lower my head, and just try and plow through some people. But Gerald Everett, very good player. And last season, 51 receptions, 411 receiving yards, 3 touchdowns on 70 targets. So truthfully, this to me is an upgrade over Robert Tonyan. And I said this last time when the Bears did get Robert Tonyan. A bad starter like Tonyan is usually a good backup. Unfortunately, last season, we didn't really see that. Tonyan did not play the way that I expected, even though I've always been kind of low on Robert Tonyan. When he was with the Packers, I would always say he's more of just a find the hole in the zone. Gerald Everett is a true tight end, is a good tight end in this league that the Bears signed to a good money deal so that they could have 2 good tight ends. And this is where I absolutely love the signing because of his ability to break tackles, be a safety valve at the tight end position. So right now, having this two-headed monster at tight end is phenomenal. So overall, love it. Love the signing and really, really like what we have at the tight end position, especially to build around a young rookie quarterback. So now, let's go to the number 3 tight end that we want to break down a little bit. Now, it's the ageless wonder, Marcedes Lewis, going into his 19th season. 6'6", 267, just absolutely huge. 40 years old, signed a 1-year, $2 million contract out here in free agency. And this guy, 0 snaps in the slot, 321 snaps in line, which I thought was a lot more than I expected. Because how much do we remember Marcedes Lewis being out there last season? Now, he was out there for over 300 snaps. But another thing, too, is when he was out there, 224 of those snaps were running downs. Also, he ran routes on 36.8% of those passing snaps. So what does that mean? He's not there to be a receiver. He's there to be another offensive lineman. He's there to help out a Darnell Wright, a Braxton Jones, to just keep the quarterback upright. And yeah, you might lose some of the guesswork, right? You know what he's going to most likely do, but still, I like the idea of at least having a good foundational blocker out there. Like we mentioned, only 4 receptions. So 4 receptions for less than 30 yards, but he did have that 1 touchdown and only 5 targets. Not there to be a receiver, more so there to be a true blocking tight end, which when you're getting that out of your 3rd tight end, I'm more than fine with that. More than happy with that, especially since we don't really have a young player out there that should be ascending on this team. So because we don't have this young depth, to me, might as well have a Marcedes Lewis. But it does bring up, remember when we had Tonjes and Chase Allen and we're like, oh man, what do we have with these young tight ends, undrafted players? But ultimately, we're stuck with none of them. So I do want to bring up one other thing before we get into some of these over and unders and did we get better. I wanted to also break down a potential, actually, never mind. We got to do Kari Blasingame first, and then we have a couple other pieces that we got to break down. So Kari Blasingame, with Blasingame, one thing that I want to bring up with him is the, Vanderbilt fullback, 6th season coming in, and the big question, does this offense even need a fullback? Right? And I think that's the big question because Luke Getsy, he needed a fullback. He said he wanted a fullback. That's how he runs the system. And I think that, and typically you don't see a heavy fullback system in a McVay system, right? Name the fullback for the Rams. Not a lot of people can, right? You can't. You really, really can't. But I think if anyone is going to get the most out of his players, it's going to be Shane Waldron. And that, I think, is the biggest piece, is that Kari Blasingame is a good player. He's a solid blocker. He's a solid receiver. He's a good all-around player. Only downside, he's 6 foot and 233. Now, from watching the tape of how Shane Waldron likes to run his offense, I do feel like he could find a spot for him. They like to throw weird combinations with the backfield, and I think that's a perfect opportunity to leverage Kari Blasingame to say, hey, we can leverage a fullback in different ways, in different scenarios. But it is a question just to see, okay, when I'm watching him at training camp, how is he being used? What formations are they putting what formations, packages do they have Kari Blasingame in? Because that ultimately, to me, is the biggest question with Blasingame is, where is he going to play? Does he have a position on this roster? Because they like the player. It's just more of a scheme fit than anything else. So now next, before we get into the over-unders, I do want to talk about one thing in particular. And it's a weird position battle. I should have had it on my little agenda. But the position battle is one of the things that we are going to probably talk about a little bit during the offseason, during training camp, and as we start formulating what does this roster look like. Because first off, does Kari Blasingame make sense on the roster? Does it make sense for them to have a fullback? Otherwise, you're looking at Stephen Carlson, Tommy Sweeney, and Brandon Bates. And as I'm looking at this, I actually realized I don't have the graphic. Let me just drag this in live as I'm recording. Here we go. Here is the position battle for tight end number 4. So this is the biggest position battle we'll see out there. But you have Stephen Carlson going into his 4th season, 6'4", 240 out of Princeton, with Brendan Bates as the rookie. I feel everyone's kind of rooting for him. Undrafted out of Kentucky, 6'5", 255, so a big body tight end that the Bears are bringing in. And really, Brendan Bates, nothing outrageous, but still someone that was at least on a handful of draft boards as more of a projected 7th rounder or an undrafted player. And then you have Tommy Sweeney, 5 years experience, 6'5", 255. And yeah, it sounds weird to be bringing up our 4th tight end and saying that, this is a position battle, but it is. It's someone's livelihood. It's someone that wants to try and get on this roster. And also, you can even throw Kari Blasingame into that mix as a 4-way race to say, hey, how many 4 big bodies are we going to have on this team? And another thing to consider, too, is the new kickoff rules. Because now more people are saying, how can we get these new kickoff rules and how can we dominate the kickoffs? A tight end might be a phenomenal piece to have out there, someone who's more focused on the blocking aspect that can potentially block people better on these kickoffs. Something definitely to consider and think about. So we've gone through all the different individuals, all the different depth charts that we need to with the players. Now it is time to go through some over-unders. And my over-unders that I set are specific to Cole Kmet. Now, I could have done the entire tight end unit, but I wanted to look at what Cole Kmet did last year and just kind of ask all of you, what do we think Cole Kmet is going to do from a receptions, yards, touchdowns, and targets perspective? So last season, 73 receptions. What are we thinking? Over, under, push, exactly 73? And when I think about this, I actually lean a little towards the under. And I think I'm pretty confident with going with the under. Yet again, not saying Cole Kmet would be bad, but more so because you have a lot of wide receivers. You have 3 great wide receivers that you have out there, and we'll see what happens with Rome Odunze. But also when you factor in Gerald Everett, I just think that overall you're going to see less targets going Cole Kmet's way. And I don't think that this is going to be a super pass-happy team. I think we're going to pass the ball more than we did last season for sure. But I don't think it's going to be, hey, we're just going to be airing it out. But I think it's going to be in the 60s. I don't think it's going to be dramatically less. I still think he's going to get his own and get solid yards. And even though him and Gerald Everett will be splitting some, but I do think he'll have a solid year overall. And I echo a similar sentiment when it comes to the yards, 719, even though like in the back of my mind right now, I'm like, maybe he goes slightly over. And what do you all think? Yards, over, under? I'm leaning a little bit under. I'm feeling like maybe he's going to get around 60 receptions in the 600 area for yards and touchdowns at being 6. This is difficult. And I'm going to actually, yet again, lean a little bit under as well, just because with Rome Odunze and Keenan Allen, you have Keenan Allen can get off that line and get open. And I still think that Cole Kmet will get his and get maybe 4 or 5 touchdowns. I just think 6 is going to be real close. I think he's going to get around 6, but I'm going to go under. And same thing with targets, 90 targets last season. Everything I'm just putting under, not hugely under, just a little bit because of the weapons that are around him. And just overall, he's going to be getting less targets. They're going to be passing him more, but I think overall less involvement when it comes down to how many targets and balls are going his way. But still, I still think he's going to be good. I still think he's going to look great. So now let's talk about the final piece. The final item. Did we get better? Did we get better at the tight end position? And it's hard not to say yes, because we did. I think when you look at this, Cole Kmet is still Cole Kmet, right? We'll just kind of toggle this back and forth. And here, I'll move myself down here so that we don't get sick of this. So Cole Kmet is Cole Kmet. chances are he's going to get a little bit better. And you look at last year, Robert Tonyan. Gerald Everett is a better tight end than Robert Tonyan. This is not a bold take. It's just facts. And then Mercedes Lewis, maybe he takes a little bit off. Maybe he looks a little bit worse this year because he is going to be 40 years old. Maybe he's slightly slower. But still, this is your third tight end that you're talking about. And then you get down to your fourth tight end. You at least have some competition, and maybe somebody bumps Stephen Carlson out of the roster, and Tommy Sweeney could be that guy. He's been a solid kind of that third tight end. So him being your fourth tight end, I don't mind that. So maybe Tommy Sweeney comes in, and now he kind of is that bump up over Carlson. And Blasingame is Blasingame. I think overall, this unit, right? We talk about this with every single unit. Did we get better? First unit on the board? Yes. Yes, we got better with Gerald Everett, and that's why I'm super pumped. And also, I'm excited to see Rome Odunze Williams out there too. And we are counting down the days to camp, and I just can't wait. We also are going to have our player profiles coming out. I think right now it's past 30. It's past 30 pages now. So we'll do this just like we did with the draft profiles, where you'll be able to download it. You'll be able to use them for your own good. So make sure to like, make sure to subscribe out there. Also follow the podcast everywhere that you get your podcast. Just search for Unbearable Sports. And with that, Unbearable Sports Podcast, we are out.
Yeah, she's got some nice long hair and you